Okay, so let's discuss the final part 3 of the GI series, the GI physiology. So let's go on with our secretion of saliva. So when we say secretion of saliva, we have principal glands for salivation. We have your parotid, a pair of your parotid glands, okay? Submandibular gland, and a pair of your sublingual. Okay, so the parotid is the largest, okay, just below and in front of the ear. So this is the parotid, the largest gland, okay, and it produces approximately 25% of our saliva. When we say submandibular, or we have your submaxillary, okay, this is at the posterior corner of the mandible and produces your 70% of your saliva. Okay, though it is not the largest gland, but it produces most of the salivary secretion, I should say. Okay, so a pair of sublingual is below naman the floor of the mouth, below the tongue, and produces approximately 5% of our saliva that will enter our oral cavity. Okay? So, um, yeah. So the daily secretion, okay, of a normal person, um, is ranging between your 800 to 1,500 ml. Okay? And this is the illustration of your salivary gland, your parotid, your sublingual, your submandibular. So, sino dito ang may pinakamaraming pinoproduce na saliva? It's your submandibular gland. The largest, your parotid gland. So the primary secretion produced by your acinar cells resembles at the plasma. Modification of the primary secretion in the striated and excretory ducts, there is less sodium, less chloride, more potassium, okay, more bicarb in the saliva than in plasma. Because the ductal cells actively absorb your sodium from the lumen, whereas your potassium and your bicarb are actively secreted into the lumen. So, take note ha, mas madami po tayong potassium at bicarb sa saliva than your sodium and your chloride. Bakit daw? Because your sodium is actively absorbed from the lumen, pero ang potassium at bicarb, they are actively secreted into the lumen. Your chloride leaves the lumen either exchange of your bicarbs or by passive diffusion along the electrochemical gradient created by your sodium absorption. So, the electrolyte composition of saliva, they are hypotonic actually, and at high rate of secretion, okay, electrolyte composition approaches that of plasma. At low secretion rates, the saliva, okay, has much lower osmolality than in plasma. Okay, because the ductal epithelium has more time to modify. So we have hormonal effect. Your aldosterone, okay, will increase the sodium absorption and your potassium secretion by your sodium potassium ATPase. Okay? So hormonal effect on the composition. So this is your aldosterone. It will increase the sodium absorption and potassium secretion. Okay? So in hypoaldosteronism, we have increase in your sodium and potassium in the saliva, while in your hyperaldosteronism, okay, we have decreased sodium potassium in the saliva. Okay. Saliva contains two major types of protein secretion. We have your serous secretion. It contains your thiolin. Okay. This thiolin is an amylase. Okay. An enzyme that digests your starches. Take note. So they contain your serous secretion. Okay? When we say mucus secretion, they contains mucin. So this mucin is for the lubrication for your surface protective purposes. Okay? So 99.4% it composed of water and the remaining 0.6% include your electrolyte, your buffers, and glycoproteins, antibodies, enzyme, okay, and the waste product. Okay? So your saliva has a pH between your 6 to 7. This is a favorable range for digestive action of your thiolin. Okay? So the function of your saliva for oral hygiene. Saliva has important role for maintaining healthy oral tissues because it has bacteriolytic enzyme and antibodies. So they destroy the bacteria and the viruses. Okay? It helps destroy the bacteria and viruses. The flow of saliva itself helps wash away pathogens and food particles. So, if we have clinical correlation here, your serostomia, it's the dryness of the mouth, okay? Because there is a low, okay, low production of your saliva. So, this serostomia is a major feature of your Sjogren's syndrome. So, serostomia leads to infection of the mouth and will cause your bad oral smell. In patients complain of difficulty in swallowing, dry food, inability to speak continuously. Your nervous regulation of your salivary secretion, we have your salivatory nuclei located at the medulla. So, excited by both taste and tactile stimuli. So, both taste and tactile stimuli. Salivation can also be stimulated or inhibited by the neuron signaling arriving in the salivatory nuclei from higher centers of the CNS. We have your parasympathetic, profuse watery secretion, and in your sympathetic, there is a thick viscid, okay, secretion. Okay, your alpha-1 receptors, amylase secretion B receptors. Okay. So let's take a look at this diagram. Okay. The sense of smell, taste, sounds, and sight. Okay. Will go to the higher centers through your salivatory nucleus of the medulla. Okay. There can be a parasympathetic effect. Okay, in your otic ganglion and in your submandibular ganglion. So your otic ganglion is for your cranial nerve 9 and your submandibular ganglion cranial nerve 7. Okay, so your otic ganglion will then go to your will then provide or produce your acetylcholine going to your parotid gland. Okay, as well as the submandibular ganglion produces your acetylcholine going to your submandibular gland and sublingual gland. Then this gland will then release or increase salivary secretion via the effect of your acinar secretion and your vasodilation. Okay? So, ganun po ang nangyayari, okay, when it comes to your production of your secretion. So, your esophageal secretion, okay, entirely mucus in character. They provide lubrication for your swallowing. So, no digestive enzyme secretion in your esophageal secretion. Okay. So, your gastric secretion naman, they are mucus-secreting cells line the entire surface of the stomach. Okay, they secrete large quantities of very viscid mucus that coats the stomach mucosa. These mucus-secreting cells then provide shell of protection of the stomach wall and contribute lubrication of food transport. It is an alkaline because it neutralizes. Okay, there is neutralization of the acid here. Okay, so your mucus secreting cells are actually alkaline for the neutralization of the acid. Okay, so acidic glands or your gastric glands in the fundus and body secretes your pepsinogen, hydrochloric hydrochloric acid, okay, intrinsic factors, histamine, and your mucus. Okay? So, mainly naman, ang pyloric gland ninyo is in the antrum of the stomach. So, we have discussed it na, tapos na natin last time, kung nasan ang antrum of the stomach. And then, this pyloric gland secretes your mainly mucus for the protection of your pyloric mucosa from the stomach acid, and your gastrin from your G cells, somatostatin from your D cells. Okay. So, your gastric secretory glandular mucosa. So, this is the illustration. Next. Secretions of your ocentic gastric glands. The glands are located on the inside surface of the body and the fundus, okay, of the stomach. Constitute approximately 80% of the stomach. Contain different secretory cells like your mucous neck cells mainly secretes your mucus. Next one, your chip or peptic cells, okay, produces your pepsinogen. When pepsinogen is first secreted, it has no digestive activity, but peptinogen is activated to pepsin via hydrochloric in the stomach, pepsin itself via the positive feedback mechanism. Your pepsin is activated prolytically, prolytic enzyme, proteolytic enzyme in a highly acid medium optimum of 1.8 to 3.5 pH. Okay, the regulation of your pepsinogen secretion, stimulation of the peptic cells by your acetylcholine, okay, releases from the vagus nerves or from the gastric enteric nervous plexus, and stimulation of the peptic cell secretion in response to acid in the stomach. So, number 3, parietal or your ocentic cells secretes your hydrochloric acid and your intrinsic factor. So, you have to memorize, okay, these different cells and ano-ano yung mga sinisecrete nila. Okay, so your hydrochloric provides acidic medium for the stomach. This is important for your digestive enzymes, like your pepsin, activated from your pepsinogen. Ang pH is 1.8 to 3.5. Your lingual lipase, the pH optimum is 4. So the pH at the canalculus of parietal cells is as low as 0.8. So your hydrochloric softens food and your gastric acidity has antibacterial activity. Okay, the function of your intrinsic factor, they produces from the parietal cells. So your intrinsic factor is essential for absorption of your vitamin B12. Saan? Sa may ileum. If binds with vitamin B12 and protects from gastric and intestinal digestion, vitamin B12 is important for the maturation of your RBCs. So, if there is a destruction of your parietal cells, okay, example, due to gastritis or nagkaroon ng surgery like gastrectomy, okay, then there will be higher chances that the patient will have pernicious anemia due to failure of RBC maturation. Kasi nga, ang B12 ninyo is important for maturation of RBC. And kailangan ng B12, okay, ang absorption of vitamin B12 sa ileum, kailangan niya ng intrinsic factor. Okay? So, your pernicious anemia is due to the lack of your vitamin B12. Okay? Your achloridria, lack of acid secretion, diagnosed when the pH of the gastric secretion fails to decrease below 6.5 after maximal stimulation. Hypochloridria, okay, diminished acid secretion. So, this figure, vitamin B12, your cobalamin, absorption depends on the gastric intrinsic factor because your B12 is cobalt-containing vitamin. So, vitamin B12 is transported into your portal blood bound to your protein transcobalamin, and people who lack with intrinsic factor fail to absorb your vitamin B12 and develop your pernicious anemia. Okay? So, this is the illustration. Next. Your enterochromaffin-like cells, your ECL cells, they secrete your what we call your histamine. So, with your paracrine effect, take note, paracrine effect on parietal cells, your acetylcholine, gastrin, okay, act on your ECL cells to produce your histamine and then to produce your hydrochloric acid secretion by the parietal cells. Next. So these are the illustrations, so you can just look at it. Okay, take note. So surface mucous cell, take note. Surface mucous cells produces your mucus, trefoil peptide bicarbonate secretion, your mucous neck cells, stem cells compartment, and your parietal cells produces acid intrinsic factor secretion, your ECL cells produces your histamine secretion, and your chip cells pepsinogen secretion. Okay, let's go on to your hydrochloric secretion. The mechanism of acid secretion by parietal cells. Within the parietal cells, we have your carbon dioxide, which diffuses to your ECF, combines with your H2O to form your H2CO3. This is a hydrogen and your bicarbonate. Okay? At the basal lateral membrane, your HCO3, okay, your bicarb, releases into the blood in exchange with your chloride via your chloride bicarb exchanger. So eventually, your bicarb secreted back into the GI tract by the pancreas. So the apical membrane, your hydrogen secreted into the lumen of the stomach via hydrogen potassium ATPase or the hydrogen potassium pump. Your chloride follows your hydrogen into the lumen by diffusing through the chloride channels in the apical membrane. So this is the illustration, the mechanism of your acid secretion. So sabi niya dito, from the parietal cells, okay, we have your carbon dioxide, tapos carbon dioxide to produce your carbon dioxide plus your H2O. Then, through your carbonic anhydrase, we produces your H2CO3. Then, your basolateral membrane has your bicarbonate, okay, and releases it into the bloodstream, okay, via your exchange of your chloride, okay, via a chloride bicarbonate exchanger. Okay? So the apical membrane then, your your hydrogen, okay, secreted into the lumen. Okay? Secreted into the lumen of the stomach via your hydrogen potassium pump na tinatawag. Okay, your chloride then, okay, your chloride follows the, di ba lumabas siya kanina dyan, okay, your chloride follows the hydrogen into the lumen via diffusing through your chloride channels in the apical membrane. So, ganun ang nangyayari dyan. Okay, regulation of the hydrochloric secretion, stimulation of the gastric acid secretion via vagal activation, gastrin, histamine, proteins in the food. Your acetylcholine releases from your vagus nerve. They bind to the receptor on parietal cells, and hydrogen will be increased in secretion by parietal cells. Your atropine blocks the muscarinic receptors on parietal cells. And we have a drug, pirenzepine, for the selective M1 antagonist. Next is your gastrin. So your gastrin releases into your circulation via your G cells. So gastrin releases by your G cells sa stomach and through ninyo. So binds with the receptors on the parietal cells, and it stimulates the hydrogen secretion. Okay? Your histamine then will release from the mast cell like cell in the gastric mucosa called your ECL cells, and binds with your H2 receptors on your parietal cells. They produces your hydrogen secretion via parietal cells, and your cimetidine, ranitidine will block H2 receptors. These are drugs that can block your H2 receptors, cimetidine and ranitidine. So, yan, regulation of acid secretion. So, your gastrin will go to your second messenger for your parietal cell to produce your your hydrogen acid secretion, as well as your histamine and acetylcholine, pero hindi po si somatostatin. Okay? Regulation of gastric acid secretion. So, your M cells is blocked by your pirenzepine, and your cimetidine band, it blocks your H2 receptors. Your misoprostol will block your P cells. Okay? Yeah. So, good to know that your misoprostol is analog of your prostaglandin E2. It increases your gastric mucus production and enhances your duodenal bicarbonate secretion. It also increases your mucosal blood flow, which aids in the buffering of your hydrogen. An indifferent effect of your gastric acid secretion reduces endogenous histamine secretion. Limit the damage caused by your agents such as your acid and your alcohol to superficial mucosal cell. Used to reduce your NSAID, induced gastric damage. Your stomach mucosal barrier. The stomach is exposed to the harshest condition in the digestive tract. To keep from digesting itself, the stomach has a mucosal barrier with a thick coat of bicarbonate-rich mucus on the stomach wall, protects the gastric mucosa from gastric juice. So your epithelial cells are joined by your tight junctions. It prevents penetration of your hydrochloric between your cells. Your gastric gland have cells impermeable of your hydrochloric and high mucosal blood flow to rapidly remove the hydrogen that crosses the mucus barrier. So we have phases of your gastric juice secretion. So Your neural and hormonal mechanism regulate the release of your gastric juices. The stimulatory and inhibitory events occur in three phases: your cephalic reflex phase, gastric phase, and intestinal phase. When we say cephalic reflex phase, okay, the prior to the food enter to the stomach, that is cephalic reflex. Prior to food entering the stomach. Your gastric phase, once the food enters your stomach, and intestinal phase, partially digestive food enters the duodenum. So, digging deeper with your cephalic phase, it occurs before the food enters the stomach and especially while it is being eaten. So, the stimulation results from your the sight or thought, the smell, or the taste of the food. They stimulate, the stimulation of taste or smell receptors. The mediated nerve here is the vagus. Okay, mediated by the vagus nerve. And the greater the appetite, the more intense is stimulation. It accounts about your 20% of your um, gastric secretion associated with eating a meal. Inhibitory events include your loss of appetite or depression, your decrease in the stimulation of your parasympathetic division. Okay? So, next one is your gastric phase. It occurs when the food enters now the stomach and under nervous and hormonal control na po si gastric phase. Your long vagovagal reflexes from your stomach to the brain and back to the stomach to the nervous mechanism. Okay, it is a nervous mechanism. Your local enteric reflex is also a nervous mechanism, and the gastrin is a hormonal mechanism. It accounts for about 70% of the total gastric secretion. Your excitatory events of your gastric phase includes your stomach distension, activation of your stretch receptors, your neural activation, activation of your chemoreceptors by your peptides, caffeine, and rising pH. Release of gastrin to the blood. Inhibitory events includes your pH lower than 2 and emotional upset that overrides the parasympathetic division. Your intestinal phase, excitatory phase. Partially digested food enters the duodenum and a small amount of gastrin released by your duodenal mucosa causes your small amount of stomach secretion, 10%, and inhibitory phase, distension of the duodenum, presence of fatty product, hypertonic chyme, and the irritants in the duodenum, inhibition of local reflexes and vagal nuclei, closes the pyloric sphincter and releases enterogastrones that inhibits your gastrin. That's your intestinal phase, excitatory phase, and inhibitory phase. Okay. This illustration summarizes the phases. Okay. So, your cephalic phase via vagus nerve, okay, parasympathetic excites the pepsin and acid production. Then, the gastric phase, it's a local nervous secretion reflex, vagal reflex, and gastrin histamine stimulation. Then, your intestinal phase, your nervous mechanism, and hormonal mechanism. Okay, mga diseases. Okay. Gastritis, it's the inflammation of your gastritis is usually superficial and therefore not very harmful. So when you're severe, okay, when it is severe, it can penetrate deeply into the mucosa, okay, and cause complete atrophy, and your um, clinical feature here will be the clinical feature may be asymptomatic or can cause variable epigastric pain, okay, variable epigastric pain with nausea and vomiting, and may cause some hemorrhage. Okay, so may be present as overt hematemesis, melena, or potential fatal blood loss. So, in many people who have chronic gastritis, the mucosa gradually becomes atrophic until little no gastric gland digestive secretion remains, and there will be a loss of stomach secretion in the in gastric atrophy. Okay, then it lead to achlorhydria and your pernicious anemia. Your gastritis causes chronic bacterial infection near H. pylori of the gastric mucosa and is also associated with your heavy use of your NSAIDs, excessive alcohol consumption, and heavy smoking. And in severe stress, example in trauma, burn, and surgery, um, nagkakaroon sila ng gastritis and as well as ischemia and shock. Okay, the mechanism include increased acid secretion with your back diffusion, decreased production of your bicarbonate buffer, reduced blood flow, and disruption of the adherent mucus layer, your direct damage to the epithelium. Your peptic ulcer diseases, it's a chronic, most often solitary lesions, occur in a portion of the GIT exposed to aggressive action of your acid peptic juices and is an excoriated area of the stomach or intestinal mucosa, or the pathogenesis of the PUD is imbalance between your mucosal defense and your damaging forces. It occurs when the rate of gastric secretion decreases the protection. Then, the gastric acid and pepsin are prerequisites for all peptic ulcerations. So, the site of your PUD in order of decreasing frequency can be duodenum first portion, stomach usually antrum, your gastroesophageal junction within the margins of your gastrojejunostomy, and duodenum, stomach, jejunum, or patients with Zollinger-Ellison syndrome. And causes, because of your high acidic peptic content, irritation, poor blood supply, your poor secretion of your mucus, and your infection, your H. pylori. Okay, that's the causes of your PUD. Okay. So let's discuss this one. In your PUD, we have the figure here. Okay. In normal, okay, normal patient or normal person, we have aggressive forces like your gastric acidity and peptic activity. But the defensive forces, madami. Just like your surface secretion by corb secretion into the mucus, mucosal blood flow, apical surface membrane transport, epithelium, the regenerative capacity and elaboration of your prostaglandin. These are the defensive forces. But in your impaired defense, okay, um, impaired defense, nagkakaroon ng ischemia, shock, delayed gastric emptying, duodenal gastric reflux. Okay? So, dito, makikita natin na intact yung barrier. Okay? Yung intact yung barrier. Pero kapag impaired or wala yung mga barrier natin, there can be, okay, impaired defense. Okay? Walang proprotekta against yung mga aggravating causes. Okay? So, kapag increase ang aggression naman, okay, if there is increased aggression, there will be aggravating causes like your H. pylori infection, NSAID, aspirin, cigarette, alcohol, impaired regulation of your acid pepsin secretion, then it can damage, okay, yung inyong defense. Okay? So, pwedeng because of wala na impair na yung defense natin, okay, tapos nagkaroon pa ng increase ng aggression, then, that causes your PUD na. Okay? The aggressive factors like your acid, your H. pylori, NSAIDs, and lifestyle, okay, versus your mucosal defense. Okay? So, to prevent your PUD and ulcerations, you have to have a healthy defense, mucosal defense. Okay? Yan. Bacterial infection by your H. pylori. Many PUD patients have chronic infection like your H. pylori. The bacterium is capable of penetrating the mucosal barrier by its physical capability to burrow through the barrier, releasing bacterial digestive enzymes that liquefy the barrier, metabolize urea to your ammonia and carbon dioxide by your enzyme called your urease. Okay? The acidic secretion can be penetrated into the underlying epithelium and literally, okay, digest the gastrointestinal wall and can cause peptic ulceration. Then one of the diagnoses for your peptic diseases is your urea breath test. Okay? This is a radiolabeled urea ingested. Your radioactive C14 and non-radioactive C13. If H. pylori are present in the patient's stomach, urease produced by your organism will split into urea and carbon dioxide. This is radioactively labeled and exhaled. Your ammonia, okay, finally, and ammonia. Finally, the radioactivity is detected by your breath, okay, and detected by C14, C13 in the exhaled air. Other factors that predispose to ulceration includes your smoking vices, okay, alcohol, because it increases your vagal. Ito, okay, it's your vagal. It increases your vagal stimulation of the stomach, secretory glands, and your alcohol because it breaks down your mucosal barrier. Your aspirin and your NSAIDs are strong, has a strong tendency for breaking down the mucosal barrier. Okay, in clinical features of your PUD, we have epigastric burning and aching pain. So there's a few presence Few presents with your complications such as your anemia, flank hemorrhage, and perforation. And pain tends to worse at night. Take note, pain tends to worse at night and occurs usually 1 to 3 hours after meal. That's your PUD. Main complications are bleeding, perforation, obstructions from edema or scarring, and your gastric outlet obstruction. We have your Zollinger-Ellison syndrome, first described by Robert Zollinger and Edwin Ellison. This severe peptic ulcer secondary to gastric acid hypersecretion due to unregulated gastrin release from your endocrine tumor, your what we call gastrinoma. Okay, your tumor commonly occurs in the head of the pancreas, your non-beta, or your duodenum. Your gastrin stimulates acid secretion through gastric receptors on the parietal cells and including histamine defense from your ECL cells. Okay, some treatment options for your PUD can be used your antibiotics to kill the bacteria, which is your H. pylori, um, your amoxicillin, clarithromycin, with your PI in your triplet therapy. Okay, antacids for neutralization like your aluminum hydroxide, magnesium hydroxide, your milk of magnesia. Okay, administration of your acid suppressants like your for the decrease of your hydrochloric secretion such as your ranitidine, cimetidine, famotidine. Okay, and histamine receptor blockers blocks the stimulatory effect of histamine and gastric gland, reduce gastric acid secretion about 70 to 80%. Your omeprazole, lansoprazole, your proton pump inhibitor more potent, inhibit the hydrogen and potassium pump irreversibly. It decreases the acid secretion by up to 95%. Okay, that's your omeprazole and lansoprazole. Gastric outlet obstruction, your pyloric stenosis caused by malignancy. Okay. Your pancreatic adenocarcinoma with extension of your duodenum to your or stomach in common cause of your malignant GOO. Distal gastric cancer remains a relatively common cause of malignant GOO, accounting to your 35% of your GOO. Fibrotic constriction after peptic ulceration. Acute peptic ulcers can cause obstruction via inflammation-induced edema and tissue deformation. Your large gastric polyps cause injury due to your fibrosis after resolution of the um, acute cases. The most common clinical feature of your GO or your gastric outlet obstruction or your pyloric stenosis includes your nausea and vomiting or vomiting, your epigastric pain, early satiety, abdominal distension, and weight loss, vomiting because of projectile. Pancreas. Your pancreas has endocrine and exocrine function. So the endocrine function, the islets of Langerhans with cell releasing your insulin from your beta, glucagon for your alpha cells, somatostatin for your delta cells, and pancreatic polypeptide by your P cells. Okay? These are essential for regulation of metabolism. And an exocrine function naman niya is to secrete pancreatic juices. It breaks down all category of foodstuff, and your acini, clusters of secretory cells containing zymogen granules with digestive enzyme. Your pancreatic exocrine secretion, the pancreatic digestive enzymes are secreted by your pancreatic acini. And the large volumes of your your bicarbonate, I should say, secreted by your small ductules and large ducts leading from your acini, flows through the long pancreatic duct and empties into the duodenum of papillae of Vater, okay, surrounded by your sphincter of Oddi. The sphincter controls the emptying. So this is the small duct, the acinar cells, and the basement membrane, your zymogen granules here, and your rough endoplasmic reticulum. So that's your acini of the pancreas. So how to regulate the pancreatic secretion? So basic stimuli that cause pancreatic secretion can be your parasympathetic nervous stimulation, causes your pancreatic juices to be released. Now your cholecystokinin, secreted by your duodenal and upper jejunal mucosa when food enters the small intestine, causes release of pancreatic juice rich in enzyme. Your secretin, secreted by duodenal and jejunal mucosa when highly acid food enters the small intestine, cause release of pancreatic juice rich in bicarbonate but poor in enzyme. Your acinar cells, enzymatic secretion, have receptors for your CCK or your cholecystokinin and muscarinic receptors for your ACH or your acetylcholine. Your CCK is the most important stimulant. Your eye cells secretes CCK in the presence of amino acids, fatty acids in the intestinal lumen. Your acetylcholine also stimulates enzyme secretion. Your ductal cells, aqueous secretion of your bicarbonate, have receptors for secretin, your CCK, and your acetylcholine. Secretin from your S cells of the duodenum is the major stimulant and secreted in response to your hydrogen in the intestine. The effects of secretin are potentiated by both CCK and ACH. So this is the illustration. Yeah. So as you can see, the phenylalanine, methionine, tryptophan, okay, will stimulate the eye cells to produce your CCK, your cholecystokinin, and your secondary messenger in your acinar cells will receive it and produces your enzymes. Now your hydrogen stimulates your S cells to produce your secretin, and going to your CAMP, which is the secondary messenger in acinar cells, produces your aqueous secretion in ductal cells. In ductal cells to ha, in acinar cells naman to. So eye cells, acinar cells, and your S cells in ductal cells. That's okay. Next phases of pancreatic secretion, we have your cephalic, gastric, and intestinal. So we have discussed this. your cephalic and gastric, the same nervous signals from the brain that cause secretion of in the stomach. 20% of the total secretion of pancreatic enzymes after a meal and intestinal phase after a chyme leaves the stomach and enter your small intestine. Your pancreatic secretion becomes copious and mainly in response to your hormones secretin and your cholecystokinin. The functions of your pancreatic secretions can be digestive function and protective function. So when we say digestive function, this is the secretion of digestive enzymes and neutralization of acidic chyme. So this digestive function, okay, of pancreatic cells provide optimum pH for pancreatic enzyme. So protective function, they neutralizes your acidic chyme, okay, for the protection of intestinal mucosa from that acidic environment. Okay. Pancreatic digestive enzyme contains multiple enzymes for digesting of three major types of food, your protein, your carbohydrates, and fats. So also contains your large quantities of bicarbonate ions and important in neutralizing your acidity of chyme and provide optimal environment for pancreatic enzymes. Your enzymes of pancreatic juice. Some enzymes are released in inactive form and activated in your duodenum. Examples, your trypsinogen, chymotrypsinogen, procarboxy polypeptidase. Okay, they are enzymes, okay, activated only after they are secreted into the duodenum. Take note, your trypsinogen will be converted to your trypsin via your enterokinase or trypsin. Okay? Your chymotrypsinogen to your chymotrypsin via your trypsin. Okay? Procarboxypeptidase to carboxypeptidase via your trypsin. So this catalyzes free form to achieve active form. Okay, so from free form to active form, your enterokinase deficiency occurs on your congenital abnormality and leads to protein malnutrition. Okay, active enzymes secreted are amylase, lipase, nucleases. Okay, these enzymes require ions and bile for optimal activity. So the formation of active peptidase from your inactive precursor, this occurs only when they have reached the site of action, and it is secondary for action of the brush border hydrolase called your enterokinase. Okay, it's the secondary action of the brush border hydrolase called your enterokinase. Okay, so this is the conversion from your free form to active form. Okay. Your pancreatic enzyme for digesting carbohydrate is pancreatic amylase. Pag fat digestion, we have your pancreatic lipase, cholesterol esterase, and phospholipase. Your pancreatic lipase hydrolyzes neutral fat into fatty acids plus your monoglycerides. Your cholesterol enterase causes hydrolysis of your cholesterol and esters. Your phospholipase splits fatty acids from your phospholipids. And your protein digestive enzymes, your trypsin, chymotrypsin, carboxypolypeptidase. Okay? Sila naman yan. Protein. Now let's go on to your trypsin inhibitor is secreted along with the other secretion to prevent self-digestion of the pancreas. No or weak trypsin inhibitor will cause pancreatic damage and lead to your pancreatitis. Okay? Your pancreatitis is the inflammation of your pancreas. When pancreas severely damaged or the duct is blocked, okay, the pancreatic secretion may be pulled in the damaged area and pancreas. The effect of trypsin inhibitor is often overwhelmed. Then the pancreatic protease secretion rapidly become activated and can literally digest the pancreas. A condition called your acute pancreatitis. So, the secretion of bile by the liver. Your bile secreted by the liver, hepatocytes, and your ductals secretes electrolytes stored in the gallbladder until needed in the duodenum. Ejected from the gallbladder into small intestine when gallbladder contracts. Your water, your sodium chloride, other small electrolytes absorbs through gallbladder mucosa, concentrating the remaining bile constituents, your bile salts, cholesterol, lecithin, and bilirubin. Okay? So take note of the bile salt, cholesterol, your sodium crystals, composed of your salts and your cholesterol. So the bile synthesis of and secretion from liver hepatocytes, intrahepatic ducts, to right and left hepatic ducts, common hepatic duct, cystic duct, gallbladder for storage, cystic duct, and common bile duct. So obstruction in your liver hepatocytes, intrahepatic ducts, your hepatic ducts, common hepatic ducts, and cystic duct can cause jaundice, as well as if there's obstruction in your cystic duct and common bile duct can cause your jaundice. Unconjugated bile salts are reabsorbed from your bile ducts, your cholehepatic circulation. Conjugated bile salts enter the duodenum, reabsorbed from terminal ileum by your sodium symport carrier, your ileal sodium bile acid co-transporter, after carrying out its function, circulated back into the liver by your enterohepatic circulation after use, okay, for fat digestion. So your bile has two important functions, and bile plays an important facilitatory role in digestion and absorption. Your bile serves as means of excretion of waste products from blood, bilirubin, an end product from hemoglobin destruction, and excesses of your cholesterol. Function of your bile salts in your fat digestion and absorption have a detergent action and fat particles in the food, emulsifying or detergent function of the bile salts to break the fat globules into minute droplet. Okay, this includes your increase in your SA for your lipase action. Okay? So helps in your absorption of your digestive products of lipids by forming your micelles. Your enterohepatic circulation of your bile salts, conjugated bile salts, is recirculation of the bile salts between your intestine and liver. About 94% of the bile salts are absorbed into the blood, mainly from ileum, few from your jejunum and colon, primarily by an active ISBT in the ileum, lesser extent by your non-carrier mediated transport in your jejunum, ileum, and your colon. Then enter the portal blood and pass back to the liver. Your salts are absorbed almost entirely back into the hepatic cells and then are resecreted into the bile. Your bile secretion and recycling in the liver, enterohepatic circulation, okay? Formation of your gallstone, your cholelithiasis, when the bile becomes excessively concentrated in the gallbladder due to too much absorption of the water and bile acid from the bile, and too much cholesterol in the bile, causing cholesterol precipitation, your cholesterol gallstone. Okay? Cholesterol gallstone. Your bile salts and your lecithin in the bile helps solubilize cholesterol, but increase your cholesterol in bile to the point that it cannot be solubilized. It starts to crystallize, forming gallstone, your cholesterol stone. Okay? Inflammation of your epithelium altering the absorptive character of, okay, causes your gallstone, too much absorption of water from bile, too much absorption of bile acids from bile, too much cholesterol in the bile, inflammation of epithelium, cholecystitis, inflammation of the gallbladder, choledocholithiasis is the stone in the common duct, and cholangitis, ayan po, okay? Cholangitis is inflammation of the common bile duct. Okay? Most commonly infected po ang cholangitis. Okay? So, the normal duct is less than 2 cm. If a gallstone is small, it may pass through a common bile duct into the intestine with no complications. But if it's large, a large stone can become lodged into the opening of the gallbladder common bile duct, causing painful contractile spasm of the smooth muscle. So when the gallstone lodges into your common bile duct, your choledocholithiasis, okay, will be formed. Kaya nga siya, this large stones in your common bile duct. That's your choledocholithiasis. Then they prevent bile from entering the intestine. So the absence of the bile in the intestine decreases the rate of fat digestion and absorption. Syempre, hindi na makakapass through ang inyong bile papunta sa fat for digestion. Okay? So, approximately half of ingested fat is not digested and pass on to the large intestine and eventually appear into the feces. Okay, so if that fat will not be digested, it will pass through to the large intestine and appear to be steatorrhea. It's your bulky, fatty stool. Okay? Cholecystectomy, your surgical removal of your gallbladder for your treatment of severe gallstone, and your general must be avoided. Food are high in fat content. So the common, okay, or your innovative management for your choledolithiasis or cholecystitis or cholangitis is your ERCP. Okay? ERCP management. Next. Secretion of the small intestine, your mucus by your Brunner's glands in the duodenum. The mucus contains excess bicarbonate ions. These protect the duodenal wall from acidic chyme from the stomach. So your large amount of alkaline mucus is secreted in response to your tactile or irritating stimuli on the duodenal mucosa. Vagal stimulation causes increased secretion concurrently with stomach secretion and gastrointestinal hormones, especially secretin, or increase in your secretion. Your Brunner's gland secretion inhibited by your sympathetic stimulation, one of the factors that causes duodenum to the site of the PUD in about 50% of the ulcer patients. Okay, your secretion of intestinal digestive juices by Crepes of Lieberkühn. Okay. Okay. Your Crepes of Lieberkühn has small pits over the entire surface of small intestine. These are the small pits and secreted digestive enzyme like mucus and electrolytes. Digestive enzyme in the small intestinal secretion is peptidase, your for splitting small peptides into amino acids, aminopeptidase, and dipeptidase. For amylolytic enzyme splits disaccharides into monosaccharides, maltase, isomaltase, sucrase, and lactase. Your small amounts of enteric lipase split neural fats into fatty acids and monoglycerides. Your functions of your succus entericus intestinal juices, your digestive function by effect of your digestive enzyme, protective function by alkaline mucus protects the intestinal wall from acidic chyme, activator function for your enterokinase activates your xenogen. Okay. Next, your secretion of your large intestine with your mucus secretion from the large intestinal crypts of Lieberkühn. The mucus of the large intestine, like the small intestine, has many crypts of Lieberkühn. Unlike small intestine, large intestine crypts of Lieberkühn have no villi, okay, no enzyme secretion, secrete only mucus with bicarbonate. Functions of your alkaline mucus secretion protects the large intestinal wall against excoriation and provide adherent medium for holding fecal matter together. Alkalinity of the secretion protects the mucosa from acids forms in the feces. Normal flora converts into vitamins, your vitamin B in your liver, vitamin B12, and so on and so forth. Okay? So your vomiting or your emesis, it is means by the upper GIT forcefully rids itself of its content. So occurs when almost any part of the upper tract becomes excessively irritated, overdistended, and overexcited. Excessive distension or irritation of the duodenum provides especially strong stimulants for vomiting. Your sensory signals that initiate vomiting originate mainly from your pharynx, your esophagus, your stomach, your upper portions of the small intestine. Then the nerve impulses are transmitted by both vagal and sympathetic afferent nerve fibers to vomiting center in the brain. Motor impulses that um, causes your actual vomiting are transmitted from vomiting center by the way of 5, 7, 9, 10, 12 cranial nerves. So, 5, 7, 9, 10, 12. 5, 7, 9, 10, 12 cranial nerves to upper GIT. Is to the spinal nerves to diaphragm and abdominal muscles. So, your chemoreceptors triggered zone via your area postrema and your vomiting center Vomiting center is located in your medulla oblongata. It is mainly controlled by your chemosensors of your area postrema called your chemosensory trigger zone. Okay? So your CTZ is activated by your nicotine, other toxins, and your agonists like your apomorphine used as an emetic. Okay, the vomiting center is also activated independent of your CTZ due to your excitation and inflammation of the upper GIT, over distension of the stomach or intestines, abnormal stimulation of the organ balance, your kinesia, or even your motor sickness. Okay, so let's go to the last topics. Digestion in the GI tract. So digestion to mechanical breakdown, chewing, smooth muscle contraction, and emulsification increases your surface area to facilitate enzymatic breakdown and breakdown of your macromolecules for absorption. Your digestion of carbohydrates in the mouth and the stomach. When food is chewed, it is mixed with saliva. Salivary contains digestive enzyme thiolin, and amylase hydrolyze starch into maltose and accounts 5% of all starch digestion. Starch digestion may continue to the fundus and body of the stomach before food is mixed to the stomach secretions. Then activity of your salivary amylase is blocked by the acid of gastric secretion. Amylase became inactive as the pH of the medium falls below 4. So the digestion of your carbohydrates in the small intestine, digestion of pancreatic amylase is almost identical to the function with your amylase of saliva, but it is several times powerful. Okay? Convert starch into maltose. Your digestion of intestinal epithelial enzymes lining the villi of the small intestine contains 4 enzymes: lactase, sucrase, maltase, and dextrinase. Take note of that. 4 enzymes in the intestinal epithelial, okay, of your small intestine, capable in splitting of disaccharides like lactose, sucrose, maltose, plus other small glucose polymers into constituent monosaccharide. So, from carbohydrate digestion, almost half of the calories from carbohydrates from your sucrose and complex carbohydrates. So, complex carbohydrate cellulose not able to be digested. So, dietary fiber is roughage. Okay. So, your complex carbohydrates not able to be digested are your dietary fibers or roughage. Your complex carbohydrate, glycogen, starch, amylase, disaccharide, maltose, sucrose, lactose, to maltase, sucrase, lactase, to 2 glucose, 1 glucose, 1 fructose, 1 glucose, 1 galactose. Okay? Lactose, 1 glucose, 1 galactose. Sucrose, 1 glucose, 1 fructose. Maltose, 2 glucose. Okay. Next. In the ordinary diet, which contains more starch than all other carbohydrates combined, glucose represents about 80% of the final products of carbohydrate digestion, galactose and fructose about 20%. Your lactose intolerance, incomplete digestion of lactose, example in milk, due to low level of intestinal brush borders, disaccharide enzyme lactase. Primary lactase deficiency, a congenital absence of lactase, are most common. Okay? And we have also acquired lactose intolerance. Lactose is primary carbohydrate in milk and other dairy food. Lactase is necessary to digest lactose in small intestine. If lactase is deficient, thereby there is undigested lactose enter to the large intestine, then fermented by your colonic bacteria, producing short-chain organic acids and gases, your hydrogen, methane, and carbon dioxide. So drinking a milk is followed shortly by bloating, gas, abdominal pain, and diarrhea. That's your lactose intolerance. Let's go to the digestion of the proteins. The dietary proteins are chemically long chains of amino acids bound together by peptide linkage. Digestion of proteins in the stomach, pepsin, peptic enzyme of the stomach, most active at pH of 1.8 to 3.5 and inactive at pH above 5. Pepsin only initiates the process of protein digestion, converts the protein to proteoses, peptones, and few polypeptides, provide only 10 to 20% of total protein digestion. Your protein digestion in the small intestine, digestion of protein by pancreatic secretion. Most protein digestion occurs in the upper small intestine, in the duodenum and jejunum, under the influence from your pancreatic secretion. Immediately on entering the small intestine from the stomach, the partial breakdown products of protein are digested by your proteolytic pancreatic enzyme, trypsin, chymotrypsin, and carboxypolypeptidase A and B, and your elastase. Your both trypsin and your chymotrypsin split in protein molecules in the small polypeptides, your endopeptidase. Okay? Your carboxypolypeptidase then cleave individual amino acids from the carboxyl ends of the polypeptide, your exopeptidase. Proelat proelatase is converted into elastase then digests elastin fibers that partially holds meats together. Your protein digestion by intestinal peptidase. The last digestive stage of the protein in GIT lumen, okay, occurs in the enterocytes that lines the villi of small intestine, mainly in your duodenum and jejunum. Two types of your peptidase enzyme, your aminopolypeptidase and several dipeptidase. Split larger polypeptidase into tripeptidase and dipeptidase. More than 99% of final protein digestive products that are absorbed are amino acids and with only rare absorption of your peptides. Your proteins to proteose, peptones, polypeptides via your pepsin. Okay. So, kailangan natin. Your protein digestion are ingested as proteins, your polypeptides. Different protein sources vary greatly in the ability of digested. Most digestible, least digestible. Egg protein, plant protein. Endopeptidase hydrolyzes internal peptide bonds, your trypsin, chymotrypsin, elastase, pepsin. Your exopeptidase hydrolyzes external peptide bonds, your carboxypeptidase, AB, and aminopeptidase, PBBC, external and your internal peptidase. Okay, your PBB, brush border, cytoplasm, and epithelial cells. Your fat digestion or fats of the diet. The most abundant fat of the diet are the neutral fats. Okay, they are the most abundant fats in the diet, also known as your triglycerides. Each of the composed each one is composed of one glycerol, one glycerol nucleus, and three fatty acids. Okay. Digestion of fats in the stomach. A small amount of triglycerides is digested in the stomach by your lingual lipase, secreted by your lingual glands in the mouth, and swallowed with your saliva. Works in acidic medium. By gastric lipase, secreted by your cells in the fundus. The churning and mixing in distal stomach break lipids into small droplets. Digestion of fats in the small intestine. Digestion of pancreatic lipase. Pancreatic lipase hydrolyzes neutral fat into two fatty acids, monoglycerides. By far the most important enzyme for digestion of your triglycerides, present in enormous quantities in pancreatic juice, digests within 1 minute of all triglycerides that it can reach. Your cholesterol esterase causes hydrolysis of your cholesterol esters. Phospholipase A2 splits fatty acids from phospholipids, digesting phospholipids and forming lysophospholipids and fatty acids. Your digestion of enteric lipase. The enterocytes of the small intestine also contain lipase known as your enteric lipase. Digest your TG, triglycerides. Emulsification of fat by bile acids and lecithin. First step is physically to break the fat globules into very small size, then increase the surface area for lipase action. This process is called your emulsification of fat. Though the water-soluble digestive enzyme act as emulsion droplet surface. Okay? So this is your fats into triglycerides, phospholipids, long-chain fatty acids, fat-soluble vitamins, not soluble, forms large clumps in the aqueous chyme, and the bile in the liver disperses fats into small droplets into the digestion to aid the digestion and absorption. Your micelles formation and your cholesterol long-chain fatty acids, vitamins, absorbable phospholipids broken down by your phospholipase. Absorptive function in the GIT. The stomach is a poor absorptive area for the GIT. It lacks typical villi type of absorptive membrane. The junctions between your epithelial cells are tight junctions. Only few highly lipid-soluble substances can absorb in small quantities such as alcohol and some drugs like aspirin. Absorption in the small intestine. Absorptive surface of small intestine has many folds called your valvulae. Connectiventis or folds of Craig-Ring. Okay, valvulae connectiventis or folds of Craig-Ring. On the epithelial surface from the fold, millions of villi projects to the lumen, and each villus contains 1,000 microvilli. The villi are longest in the duodenum and shortest in distal ileum. The combination of folds of Craig-Ring and villi and the microvilli increases the total absorptive area of the mucus by 1,000-fold. So the absorption of water, isosmotic absorption. Water is transported via intestinal membrane entirely by your osmosis. Diluted chyme, osmosis through intestinal mucosa into the blood. Hyperosmotic chyme, osmosis from plasma into chyme. So make the chyme in isosmotic with the plasma. The absorption of your sodium through the intestinal epithelium is via passive and active. Osmotic absorption of water follows sodium through epithelial membrane. Your average water intake in beverages and foodstuff is roughly 1.5 liter per day, and 7.7 liter per day of fluid secretion in the GIT, such as your saliva, bile, gastric, pancreatic, intestinal secretions, and only 0.1 liter per day eliminated into the feces. So, the GI must therefore absorb the net volume of at least 8.4 liters of water per day. The GI absorption of water occurs mainly in your large intestine. Okay? So, water is driven through your intestinal epithelium via osmosis. Absorption of carbohydrates. Essentially, all carbohydrates in the food are absorbed into form of monosaccharides. Only small fractions are absorbed as disaccharides, also known as larger carbohydrates compound. The most abundant absorbed monosaccharide is glucose, account to 80% of carbohydrate calories absorbed, and remaining 20% of absorbed monosaccharide are galactose and fructose. Your carbohydrate absorption and products of your carbohydrate digestions are glucose, galactose, and fructose. Your glucose and galactose utilize apical sodium glucose symport and basolateral GLUT2 transporter facilitated diffusion. Fructose utilizes apical and basolateral GLUT5 transporters facilitated diffusion. Much of your fructose on entering the cell becomes phosphorylated, then converted to your glucose and transported out of the form of glucose. Your absorption of your proteins through the luminal membranes of the intestinal epithelial cells in the form of free amino acids, dipeptides, tripeptides, the mechanism by coupled transport, secondary active transport, your sodium amino acid co-transport, okay, and some of the hydrogen amino acid symport, dipeptidase and tripeptidase are coupled with hydrogen by peptides transporter 1 or pepti-1. Sodium and hydrogen diffuses passively down the concentration gradient and generates energy from active transport of amino acids of the peptides, and larger peptides are absorbed by your transcytosis. Okay? Your protein absorption and product is protein digestion are free amino acid, dipeptidase, and tripeptidase. So your free amino acid carried your sodium dependent co-transport proteins, and di and tripeptidase are transported by your hydrogen dependent co-transport system. Most are broken down in the cell by your intracellular peptidase into amino acids, and some larger peptides are moved to transcytosis. Okay? Your absorption of fats. In the presence of abundant bile micelles, about 97% of the fat is absorbed. In the absence of biomicelles, only 40 to 50 can be absorbed. Micelles help digestive fat products to cross the unstirred layer and reach the surface of mucosal cell. A layer of poor stirred fluid called your unstirred water layer coats the surface of your intestinal villi. This layer reduces the absorption of lipids digestion products because they are poorly soluble in water. Micellar solubilization, okay, by bile salts in lumen renders them water soluble. Enterocytes then absorb the lipid digestion products mainly by passive diffusion. Okay? So your bile salts emulsify lipids for absorption. Your micelles are formed from your emulsified lipid. So micellar solubilization enhances the delivery and absorption of lipid to the brush border membrane. The absence of micelles when bile salt is absent. The presence of micelles when bile salt is present. Most fat absorbs takes place in the duodenum and jejunum. Micelles carry end products of fats to brush border from where it diffuses to enterocytes. The fat absorption digestion is carried primarily by your pancreatic lipase, which requires colipase to penetrate the bile salting coating. End products are free fatty acids and mono and diglycerides. Most fats absorbed by your simple diffusion into intestinal cells are resynthesized into triglycerides in smooth ER. Your triglycerides combine with your protein and cholesterol to form your large particle called your chylomicron. Okay, which are packed into your secretory vehicles and exits in your exocytosis. Your chylomicrons are your picked up by your lymphatic vessels and returned to the circulation. Your shorter fatty acids, lesser 10 carbons, okay, may be directly be picked by your capillaries. So your sprue is a malabsorption of nutrients by intestinal mucosa. Malabsorption of nutrients by small intestinal mucosa is what we call your sprue. Occurs through the food is though the food is well digested. Several diseases can cause intestinal malabsorption. They are often classified together under the general term sprue. Also can occur due to removal of large portion of the small intestine, and fat absorption is more impaired than other digestive products. So there will be excess fats in the stool, and the condition is called steatorrhea. In very severe cases of sprue, also impaired absorption of the proteins, carbohydrates, calcium, vitamin K, folic acid, and even your vitamin B12. As a result, the person can suffer severe nutritional deficiency and often developing waste of the body, osteomalacia, okay, demineralization of the bones due to lack of calcium, inadequate blood coagulation due to lack of vitamin K, and pernicious anemia due to lack of vitamin B12 and folic acid absorption. So the absorptive function in the large intestine. About 1.5 liter of chyme normally passes the large intestine each day. Most of the water and electrolytes are absorbed in the colon, usually leaving less than 0.1 L of fluid to be excreted in the feces. Most of the absorption occurs in proximal one half of colon, hence this portion is called the absorbing colon, the proximal one half of the colon. And the distal colon functions principally for feces storage until defecation time, hence this is called your storage colon. Okay? Bacterial action in the colon. Numerous bacteria, especially your colon bacilli, are present even normally in absorbing colon. So they are capable in digesting small amounts of cellulose and can provide a few calories of extra nutrition for the body. Other substance form are as a result of bacterial activity are your vitamin K, vitamin B12, thiamine, and even your riboflavin. Your various gases that contribute to flatus in the colon, your carbon dioxide, your H2, and C4H4. The bacteria formed by your vitamin K is especially important because your vitamin K is a daily ingested food in normal insufficient to maintain adequate blood circulation. Your composition of feces. So, about 3 to 4 water, about 1/4 solid matter, that is composed about 30% dead bacteria, 10 to 20% fat, 10 to 20% inorganic matter, 2 to 3% protein, and 30 undigested roughage from the food and dried constituents of digestive juices. The brown color of feces is caused by your derivatives of bilirubin, such as your stercobilin and urobilin. Your constipation, characterized by infrequent, excessive strain, and hard stool defecation due to your slow movement of your feces through your large intestine. So, the overabsorption of fluid, okay, large quantities of dry and hard feces in the descending colon will occur. Any pathology of your intestine that obstruct movement of intestinal contents, like your tumor, adhesions that constrict intestines, and ulcer, can cause constipation. Function Functional cause of constipation is irregular bowel habits due to inhibition of the normal defecation reflex, atonic colon. Functional fecal retention by the commonest cause of constipation. Functional fecal retention. Common cause of constipation. Okay, and last is the diverticulosis and diverticulitis. When we say the colon develops small pouch that bulge outward, okay, through weak spot during forceful strain, this is called your diverticulosis. Due to low fiber diet, which can make stool hard and difficult to pass, if the stool is too hard, then the muscle must strain to move it. So the increased pressure in your colon then weaken the spots bulge outward, and that pouches can also be infected or inflamed, and this is now called your diverticulitis. Okay? So, and this is the large intestine. So we can see diverticulum, that is the bulge outward and weak spot in the colon. Diverticula can become inflamed and infected, and this is called your diverticulitis. Okay? And thus, the acute appendicitis is a surgical emergency characterized by an inflammation of your appendix, usually 50 to 80% associated with obstruction because of fecality, tumor, and or ball of worms, Oxyureasis vermicularis. Okay? Obstruction can cause ischemic injury, which favors bacterial proliferation with additional inflammatory exudate and edema. Clinical features include your migratory abdominal pain, nausea and vomiting, anorexia, fever or pyrexia, and tenderness in the right lower quadrant and rebound tenderness. Okay? So, we can examine this in the McBury's point. You have to palpate that one, and if there is a rebound tenderness in the McBury's point, then okay, possible you the patient having acute appendicitis. So how will you know that um, the appendicitis is ruptured? Okay, so there will be no rebound tenderness na, but infection will occur at any time. So that's all for our GIT series, and um, thank you for listening, and the PowerPoint belongs to the rightful owner. Okay, so that's all for today. God bless.